The sound of tearing paper echoed louder than any alarm. At TSA checkpoint 4B, Keith Rollins stood inches from Serafina Vance, holding the shredded remains of her US passport like a trophy. Passengers froze. Phones hovered mid-air. Someone whispered, "Did he just do that?" Serafina didn't scream. She didn't plead. She simply watched him calm, controlled, taking mental notes. Because the agent who thought he'd just crushed a powerless traveler had no idea he'd committed a federal felony against the woman about to inherit his entire world. The girl in the hoodie wasn't running late for a flight. She was the new CEO of the airline, and this checkpoint was about to become the starting point of a criminal investigation that would dismantle careers, expose corruption, and end one man's life as he knew it. The air in John F. Kennedy International Airport Terminal 4 had the metallic pre-dawn chill of recycled oxygen and stale coffee. It was 5:15 a.m., and the terminal was a river of tired, anxious travelers, all flowing toward the choke point of the TSA security screening. Serafina Vance pulled the hood of her grey sweatshirt further over her head, not to hide, but to observe. At 34, she was a statistical anomaly. A black woman, a graduate of public schools, and as of 48 hours ago, the newly appointed board-unanimous chief executive officer of Airline International, one of the largest air carriers in the world. The press release wasn't scheduled to drop for another 6 hours, timed to the opening bell of the New York Stock Exchange. Her predecessor, Richard Sterling, had been ousted in a brutal closed-door emergency meeting after a disastrous fourth quarter, and swirling rumors of financial irregularities. Serafina, who had been the brilliant, overlooked head of North American logistics, was the board's radical, desperate choice to save the company. Today was her first unofficial day. She wasn't flying to the London headquarters in the company's Gulfstream G650. She was flying first-class incognito on Aerowing Flight Z04. Her plan to experience her airline exactly as a customer did. From the check-in kiosk that froze twice to the gate agent, who seemed on the verge of tears, to the security line that snaked back into the food court. She was not a fan of what she was seeing. The entire process felt broken hostile. It was inefficient, and in business, inefficiency was a sickness. She shuffled forward her carry-on at her feet. In it was her laptop, which contained the preliminary audit files she was set to review during the 6-hour flight. These files were the real reason for Sterling's early retirement. He hadn't just been incompetent. He had been, she suspected, a thief. Billions in fuel contracts, baggage handling surcharges, and maintenance budgets were misaligned. It was her job to find out where the money went and who had helped him. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from Harrison Gable, the chairman of the board. Wheels up, she typed back, her thumb moving quickly. Still in the security line, Terminal 4. It's a mess. Staffing seems low. Morale seems lower. The brand experience is suffering before we even get to the gate. This is why we picked you, Serafina. You see the details. Fix it. Call me from the lounge. Will do. She put the phone away, stepping forward. The line split, and a TSA agent waved her impatiently toward his lane. Next, bags on the belt, laptops out, shoes off. Let's go, people. I don't have all day. Serafina looked at the man. He was in his late 40s with a sour, downturned mouth and a uniform that strained against his midsection. His name tag read, K. Rollins. He wasn't just barking orders. He was radiating a thick, palpable aura of resentment. He looked like a man who felt the world owed him something it had never paid. He watched her approach, his eyes sweeping over her. The plain grey hoodie, the simple jeans, the worn sneakers. His gaze was a dismissal. She was, in his eyes, nobody. Laptop in a separate bin. He snapped, not even looking at her, as she was already doing it. Yes, officer, she said, her voice quiet but clear. She pushed her bins onto the roller. As she walked toward the body scanner, Officer Keith Rollins stepped away from his podium, holding up a hand to stop her. Hold on. His voice was flat. He looked back at her carry-on, then at her. He pointed to a ticket which she held in her hand with her passport. This your ticket? Yes, officer. He took it from her. His eyes scanned the paper and his brow furrowed. He looked from the first-class seat 1A designation back to her face. His expression shifted from boredom to active suspicion. "First class, huh?" he said, his voice laced with a skepticism that bordered on accusation. "Nice upgrade. Lottery winner." Serafina kept her face neutral. "It's the ticket I purchased, officer." "Right. And this?" he said, snatching the dark blue passport book from her other hand. "Is this purchased, Walker, too?" He flipped it open, his thumb smudging the plastic over her photo. He stared at the name. Serafina Vance. He looked at her date of birth. He looked back at her. Serafina Vance. He scoffed, mispronouncing it intentionally. "Fancy name. You don't look like a Serafina." A cold knot tightened in Serafina's stomach. This was not a random check. This was targeted. This was the dark, ugly underbelly of the customer experience she'd come to investigate. "Officer," she said, her voice losing its quietness and gaining a hard steel edge. "Is there a problem with my documentation?" Officer Rollins seemed to swell at the challenge. He relished it. He tapped the passport against his open palm. "I don't know, Serafina. You tell me." He sneered. "This face doesn't quite match this photo. And this stamp." He squinted at a recent entry stamp from Singapore. "Looks a little blurry. You know we get a lot of fakes through here. High-quality fakes. People trying to be somebody they're not." He turned, gesturing with his head. "I'm going to need you to step over to secondary screening. We're going to have a little chat." The secondary screening area was not a room, but a glass-walled pen set to the side of the main checkpoint. It was designed for humiliation, putting its occupants on display for the thousands of passengers streaming by. Officer Rollins shoved Serafina's bins onto a stainless steel table with a clatter. Her laptop skittered dangerously close to the edge. "Empty your pockets," everything he commanded. Serafina did as she was told, placing her phone, a wallet, a pack of gum, and a single pen on the table. The lawyer who had witnessed the initial confrontation was nowhere to be seen, likely having decided not to miss his own flight over this. Serafina was on her own. "Take off your sweatshirt," she complied, revealing a simple black long-sleeved shirt underneath. Rollins picked up the sweatshirt. His movements deliberately slow and insulting, he bunched the fabric in his fists, feeling the seams with a theatrical roughness. "What's the purpose of your travel?" "Miss Vance, business." Serafina said, her eyes locked on his. "Business," he repeated, drawing the word out. "Right. And what business would that be? You a flight attendant trying to get a free ride in the front. I am an executive," she said, her voice dangerously calm. An executive. Rollins laughed a short, sharp bark. "An executive of what, this hoodie? What are you?" "The executive of picking up coffee." He was projecting. He was a man whose entire world was defined by the small metal boundaries of his security lane, and the sight of a young black woman holding a $10,000 airline ticket had shattered his sense of order. He needed to reassert his dominance. He turned his attention to her carry-on. "Open it." Serafina unzipped the bag. Inside was her company laptop, a leather-bound folio, a change of clothes, and a toiletries bag. Rollins plunged his hand into the bag without warning, his latex-gloved fingers grabbing the folio. He pulled it out and flipped it open. Inside were her briefing notes for the London office. The cover page was stamped with the Aero Wing International logo and the words, "Confidential CEO Briefing." Rollins, however, didn't read. He was a man who looked for symbols, not text. He saw the logo and his smirk widened. "Ah, I get it," he said, tapping the logo. "You work for the airline, a new executive, huh? They must have just hired you. Diversity quote." Serafina's breath hitched. That was it. The line. "Officer Rollins," she said, and her voice was no longer calm. It was glacial. "You are currently interfering with my travel. You have insulted me, and now you are insinuating my position is unearned. I need you to either identify a legitimate security threat or return my belongings so I can make my flight." The direct challenge snapped something in Rollins. His face, already ruddy, turned a deep, blotchy red. His eyes narrowed to slits. "You don't get to make demands here," he hissed, jabbing a finger at her. "I am a federal officer. I determine what's a threat. And right now, you are a threat. You're belligerent. You're uncooperative. I am perfectly cooperative." Serafina counted her body rigid. "I am, however, documenting this interaction. Your name is Keith Rollins. The time is 5:32 a.m. You are operating checkpoint 4B in Terminal 4. You think that scares me?" He spat. "You think I'm afraid of some executive with a complaint? I get a dozen complaints a day. They go in a file, and that file goes in a shredder." He picked up her passport, holding it up between his thumb and forefinger as if it were a piece of trash. "This is the problem," he said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. It's fake. I can spot him a mile away. The lamination is too thick. The watermarking is off. You probably paid $1,000 for this in some back alley. That is an official government-issued passport." Serafina stated, her heart now hammering, not with fear, but with a profound seismic rage. "I have used it to travel to 20 different countries in the last year. Give it back to me now. Give it back." Rollins smiled, a slow, predatory baring of teeth. "You know what I do with fraudulent documents? I confiscate them. I destroy them. That's federal protocol. You are mistaken, officer. If you damage that document, you will be committing a federal crime." "Oh, I'm committing a crime," he scoffed. He was enjoying this feeding off her anger, twisting it into justification. "You come in here with a fake passport, a $10,000 ticket you obviously didn't pay for, and a CEO briefing book. You're a spy or a mule or just a plain old-fashioned liar." He held the passport up to the fluorescent light. He looked at her. He looked at the passport, and then with a single, deliberate, violent twist of his hands, he ripped the passport in two. The sound was shockingly loud in the quiet tension of the pen. He tore the photo page clean from the binding, leaving the biometric chip exposed and severed. The two halves of her identity fluttered from his grasp onto the stainless steel table. Silence. The other TSA agents at the main checkpoint, who had been pointedly ignoring the confrontation, now stared their mouths agape. A passenger in the adjacent line gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Keith Rollins stared down at the two pieces of the passport. His breathing was heavy. He had done it. He had crossed the line. Serafina looked at the wreckage of her passport. She looked at her laptop, which held the secrets to $1 billion company. She looked at the man who had just tried to erase her. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She raised her eyes to meet his, and the cold fury in them made him take an involuntary step back. "You're done," she said, her voice a low-level promise. "I'm done." He stammered, his bravado cracking, replaced by a frantic need to re-establish control. "You're done. You're detained. You're not going anywhere." He jabbed a button on his radio. "I need PAPD at checkpoint 4B. I have a code 3, a fraudulent document and a hostile subject. Send backup now." He pointed a shaking finger at Serafina. "You are under arrest for what, officer?" Serafina asked, her voice echoing in the sudden, dreadful quiet. "For being an executive or for being black while doing it." Two Port Authority Police Department officers arrived within minutes, their faces set in the grim, weary masks of cops working an airport beat. They were used to irate passengers and power-tripping agents. "What's the situation?" Rollins, the senior officer. A man named Patel asked, his eyes immediately assessing Serafina, who stood perfectly still behind the table. She presented a fraudulent document. Rollins said, his voice high and ready. He pointed at the two pieces of the passport. "When I challenged her, she became hostile, belligerent. I confiscated the document and it tore." "It tore," Patel said, looking at the clean, deliberate rip. He looked at Rollins, then at Serafina. He'd seen this before. He sighed. "Mom, I'm going to need you to come with us," Patel said. He wasn't accusing just procedural. "I will," Serafina said. "But I need to be clear about what happened. Officer Rollins singled me out. He subjected me to abusive targeted questioning based on my race and my first-class ticket. He then, with full intent, destroyed my United States passport. I am a victim of a crime. Rollins exploded. She's lying. She threatened me. She's got a fake corporate ID in her bag claiming to be a CEO. Patel held up a hand. Sir, stop talking. Ma'am, let's just take this to the substation. We'll sort it out. Fine, Serafina said. I need my phone. I am entitled to one call. You're not under arrest, Mom, Patel said. You're just being detained for questioning until we can verify your identity. And how, Serafina asked, gesturing to the ruined passport. Do you suggest I do that? That was my identity. He destroyed it. I need my phone? Patel nodded to his partner, who picked up Serafina's phone from the table. You can make a call from the substation. We can't have you making calls from an active security zone. He handed her the rest of her belongings. Rollins, looking smug and terrified all at once, watched as they escorted her away. The PAPD substation was a small cinder-block office tucked away behind a staff-only door. It smelled of burnt coffee and disinfectant. Serafina was led to a small interview room. Patel placed her phone on the table. Okay, we've run your name. There's no warrants, but without a valid ID, we can't just let you go. Who are you calling a lawyer, sort of? Serafina said. She picked up her phone. Her hands were shaking now, the adrenaline finally hitting her. She navigated to her contacts, her thumb hovering over the name Harrison Gable. This was not how she had planned to start. Her first act as CEO was supposed to be a quiet audit. Instead, she was about to bring the full crushing weight of a multi-billion-dollar corporation and the US government down on one man's head. She pressed the call. It was just after 10:30 a.m. in London. Harrison Gable, chairman of Rowing International, answered on the second ring. Serafina, you should be in the air. Is everything all right? Did you get into the lounge? Serafina took a deep breath. Harrison, I'm not in the lounge. I am in the Port Authority Police Substation in Terminal 4. The silence on the other end was absolute. What Harrison's voice was sharp. All pleasantries gone. I was detained at the TSA checkpoint. An officer, Keith Rollins, took issue with my appearance and my ticket. He accused me of carrying a fraudulent passport. That's absurd. Put him on the phone with me right now. I can't, Harrison. He destroyed it. He ripped my passport in half. The PAPD has detained me for questioning while they try to verify my identity. He destroyed your passport. Harrison's voice was a low roar. He committed a federal felony against you. Yes, Serafina said, her voice tight. I need you to verify my identity. I also need you to make 2 calls. First to David Chen. Chen was Aero Wing's general counsel. I want him here in this terminal in the next 30 minutes. Second, I need you to call the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of New York. I don't care what time it is. Get them on the phone. I'll do better. Harrison said, his voice cold as ice. I know the Secretary of Homeland Security personally. I'm calling him, and I'm calling the Port Authority Commissioner. David Chen is already on his way. His office is 20 minutes from JFK. Don't say another word to anyone. Serafina, don't answer a single question. Just sit tight. The cavalry is coming, Harrison Serafina said. There's one more thing. The officer saw my CEO briefing book. He made a specific comment. He asked if I was a diversity quota. Harrison Gable let out a long, slow breath. It was the sound of a patient man's patience evaporating. Serafina, he said, I want you to listen to me. This man didn't just insult an employee. He didn't just assault a passenger. He assaulted the chief executive officer of this corporation. He assaulted the woman I personally headhunted to save this company. He just declared war on Rowing International and on me. We will handle this. The line clicked dead. Serafina placed the phone back on the table. Officer Patel, who had been listening from the doorway, looked pale. He had heard the words Secretary of Homeland Security and U.S. Attorney. Mum, he said, his voice suddenly very respectful. Maybe we got off on the wrong foot. Serafina looked up at him, her eyes void of all emotion. You have no idea, she said. Keith Rollins was back at his podium feeling triumphant. He had put that arrogant little executive in her place. He had shown her what real power was. He was boasting to another agent, a younger man named S. "You should have seen her face, S. She threatened me. Said she was documenting me." "Officer Keith Rollins," he mocked in a high-pitched voice. And then she goes on about being a CEO. "Yeah, right. CEO of nothing. I don't know," Keith Sal said, looking nervous. "You tore her passport. That's a big deal. We're not supposed to do that ever." "It was fake," Rollins snapped. "It was compromised. It tore during the inspection. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it." "She'll be deported by noon." "She was American," S muttered. "She had a New York driver's license in her wallet, a fake one." Their argument was interrupted by a sudden intense flurry of motion at the edge of the checkpoint. It wasn't just Officer Patel. It was a woman in a crisp PAPD captain's uniform, flanked by two men in suits so expensive they looked like armor. And behind them were two more men in different suits with DHS lapel pins. The group moved with a purpose that parted the sea of passengers. They weren't walking, they were marching. "Where is he?" the PAPD captain Maria Sanchez demanded. Rollins raised his hand weakly. "Captain, the hostile subject is in the substation." Captain Sanchez's eyes, dark and furious, landed on him. "Officer Rollins, you will step away from this podium now." "But Captain, I'm on duty." "Your duty is over," she snapped. "Give your badge and your radio to Officer S. You're coming with me." I'm the one who filed the report." Rollins protested, his voice cracking. One of the men in the expensive suits, a sharp-faced man named David Chen, stepped forward. He flipped open a wallet, flashing a badge. "David Chen, General Counsel for Rowing International." "Are you Officer Keith Rollins?" "Yes, Officer Rollins," Chen said, his voice a silken, venomous blade. "You are being placed on administrative leave by the TSA. Effective immediately pending a criminal investigation by the Department of Justice for the willful destruction of a United States passport. Title 18, Section 1545. And that's just for starters. The blood drained from Rollins's face. "What? No, it was fake. I swear it was fake. The passport you destroyed, the other suited man the DHS agent cut in, belonged to Miss Serafina Vance. Her identity has been confirmed by the Secretary of State, the chairman of the board of Arrow Wing. And as of 5 minutes ago, my boss, you sir, are in a catastrophic amount of trouble." Arrow Wing Rollins whispered the name, finally connecting. He looked at Chen's badge. He looked at the DHS pins. "No, she was just some girl in a hoodie. She," David Chen said, "is the new chief executive officer of this airline. The airline that pays this airport's bills. And you just ripped up her passport." The realization hit Keith Rollins like a physical blow. He staggered back, his hand fumbling at his radio. "CEO? No, that's not. That can't be Captain Sanchez," Chen said, turning to the PAPD officer. "My client is in your substation. We are here to escort her out. Your Officer Patel is also requested for a formal statement. Understood?" Sanchez said. She jerked her head at Rollins. "Take him cuffs. Get him to the substation. Use the back interview room. Read him his rights. I want him isolated." As two officers pulled a suddenly limp and whimpering Keith Rollins away, David Chen and the DHS agents walked briskly toward the substation. They found Serafina standing exactly where she had been left, her arms crossed. "Miss Vance." David Chen said, his face a mask of professional concern. "I'm David Chen. I am so profoundly sorry for what you have endured." "Is it handled, David?" Serafina asked, her voice flat. "Officer Rollins is in custody. The U.S. Attorney's Office is already drafting the charges. The head of TSA for the entire Northeast region is on his way here, and I've been told he is apoplectic. We have an emergency consulate appointment in Manhattan to get you a new passport issued within the hour, and the Arrowing Gulfstream is being fueled at the private hangar. You will not be flying commercial." Serafina nodded slowly. "Good. That's a good start." She picked up her bag. "But I'm not going to London." Chen paused. "Ms. Vance." "This didn't feel random, David," she said, looking past him through the door toward the checkpoint where Rollins had stood. He wasn't just a bigot. He was looking for me. He reacted to my name. He saw my CEO briefing. He knew what it was. Chen's professional mask slipped, replaced by a flicker of genuine alarm. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting," Serafina said, walking out of the substation, "that my predecessor Richard Sterling didn't just steal money. I think he knew I was coming today. And I think he paid a TSA agent to stop me." "My God," Chen whispered. That's conspiracy. That's a whole different level." "Exactly," Serafina said as they emerged into the main terminal, the passengers staring at the phalanx of suits and uniforms surrounding the woman in the grey hoodie. "My audit starts now. Get me Harrison on the line and get me everything. Everything on Officer Keith Rollins, his financials, his family, his phone records. I want to know who he talked to this morning." Serafina never made it to the rowing first-class lounge. Instead, she was escorted to the airport's Central Command Center, a high-tech bunker hidden deep within the terminal run by the Port Authority. Captain Sanchez gave Serafina her own office, a glass-walled room with a bank of monitors. David Chen sat opposite her, his laptop open, his fingers flying. A third man had joined them. Mark Thompson, Aero Wings, head of global security, a former FBI agent with a face like a stone carving. "She's right," Mark said, not looking up from his own tablet. "This stinks." He projected his screen onto one of the monitors. It was a digital map of the terminal overlaid with security feeds. "I've been on the phone with my internal team," Mark said. "Richard Sterling was a creature of habit, but for the last 2 weeks he's been erratic, wiping his office computer, accessing encrypted files from home. And he's been in communication with a man named Frank Rizzo." "Who is Frank Rizzo?" Serafina asked, sipping the hot black coffee someone had placed in her hand. "Rizzo is the night shift baggage handling supervisor for Terminal 4, Mark said. He's also been flagged by our internal auditors for inventory discrepancies. We thought he was stealing luggage, but his operation is bigger. We suspect he's been running a cargo theft ring, mislabeling high-value freight as lost luggage and walking it right out of the airport." Serafina leaned forward. "And Sterling. Sterling signs off on the lost and damaged cargo budget. David Chen supplied his own screen, now flashing. He's been approving millions in replacement costs for items that were never lost, just stolen. He was using Rizzo to bleed the company dry from the ground up. The puzzle was forming. So Sterling and Rizzo were partners. But where does Officer Rollins fit in?" "Got it," Mark said, his voice grim. He pulled up a new file. It was a simple employee profile. Keith Rollins. Rollins is not a smart man. He has gambling debts. 2 liens on his house. He's desperate. He cross-referenced the file with Frank Rizzo. "And there it is," Mark said, tapping his screen. "Keith Rollins' wife is Frank Rizzo's sister. They're brothers-in-law." Serafina sat back, the full ugly picture coming into focus. "It wasn't random," she whispered. "It was a setup, a conspiracy. She pieced it together, her CEO brain analyzing the hostile takeover. Sterling knew the board was bringing me in. He knew I was the logistics nerd who would find his cargo scam. He knew I was flying in today on this flight. He still had suite-level access to the flight manifests. He couldn't stop my appointment, so he decided to, what? Discredit me, humiliate me, get me arrested. All of the above." Chen said, his face pale. "If you were detained on a federal charge, even a fake one, it would be a PR nightmare. The board would get cold feet. They might reverse their decision." Sterling could claim he was deeply concerned about the new CEO's instability and offered to step back in to right the ship. He used Rollins as his weapon. Serafina said he probably told him I was a corporate spy or internal auditor coming to shut them down. He paid him to stop me. And Rollins, being the hateful man he is, used my race and gender as his excuse. It was the perfect cover. A sharp knock on the door. It was Captain Sanchez. "Miss Vance," she said. "We have Officer Rollins in interview room 2. He's talking a lot. He's terrified. He's asking for a lawyer, but he's also trying to cut a deal. He's already named Frank Rizzo." And Rizzo, Serafina asked. My team is picking him up from the baggage carousel right now. Sanchez said he's not going to know what hit him, but Rollins keeps saying he was tricked. He says Rizzo and some big shot at the airline told him you were dangerous, that you were coming to ruin them. They paid him $50,000 to create a major incident and get you detained. Richard Sterling Serafina said the name tasting like ash. She stood up. The exhaustion of the morning was gone, replaced by a cold, sharp-edged resolve. David, she said, get the U.S. attorney back on the phone. Tell them this is no longer about a destroyed passport. This is wire fraud, racketeering, and conspiracy to defraud a publicly traded company committed by its former COO. I want Sterling arrested. I want his office, his home, and his bank accounts frozen. I want it done before that 11:00 a.m. press release goes out. We are not just announcing a new CEO today. We are announcing a cleansing. Yes, Ms. Vance Chen said, already dialing. Mark, she continued, I want your team to coordinate with the PAPD. I want a full sweep audit of every arrowing employee in this terminal, starting with Rizzo's entire baggage team. Anyone associated with this ring is fired and prosecuted by sundown. I want this cancer cut out. Consider it done, Mark said. Serafina turned to Captain Sanchez. Captain, I cannot thank you enough for your professionalism, but I need one more thing. I need a quiet, secure room with a high-speed internet connection. And I need a new suit. I have a board meeting to run. By 9:00 a.m., Serafina was in a temporary executive suite in the Arrow Wing building in Queens overlooking the runways of JFK. A very flustered, very apologetic personal shopper from Saks Fifth Avenue had arrived summoned by Harrison Gable with a rolling rack of designer suits. Serafina chose a sharp navy blue pinstripe with a white silk shell. She looked finally like the CEO she was. Her hair, which had been hidden under her hoodie, was pulled back into a severe, elegant bun. Her new emergency passport sat on the desk beside her. The room was a whirlwind of activity. David Chen was coordinating with federal prosecutors. Mark Thompson was on a conference call with his security teams, who were at that very moment swarming the baggage handling areas of Terminal 4 side by side with PAPD officers. The news came in at 9:45 a.m. We got him, Mark announced, walking into the room. Richard Sterling. Federal agents arrested him at his home in Greenwich, Connecticut. He was shredding documents, tried to destroy his laptop in the fireplace. They got him. It's done. A wave of relief so profound, it was almost sickening, washed over Serafina. She closed her eyes for just a moment. The immediate threat was over. Now the cleanup. And Rizzo, she asked, singing like a canary, Mark said. He's given up the entire cargo ring. 12 employees are in custody. It's a clean sweep. The Eastern District is going to be busy. Good. Serafina stood, straightening her jacket. David, what's the status on Officer Rollins? He's been formally charged. David said the TSA fired him an hour ago. A record, I'm told. The U.S. attorney is charging him with 18 U.S. Code 1545 destruction of a passport, which carries a 10-year maximum, and they're adding conspiracy charges which carry another 5. He's facing serious federal time. He's been denied bail. And the press release, Harrison is holding it. David said he wants to know what you want to do. The 11:00 a.m. announcement is about you. This arrest of Sterling, this is a massive corporate scandal. We can't hide it. We don't, Serafina said. We control it. Get Harrison on a video call now and get the PR team. A moment later, Harrison Gable's face filled the large screen in the conference room. He looked tired, but energized. Serafina, he boomed. You look well. You look like a CEO. I hear you've been busy. It's been a productive morning, Harrison. Serafina said, a grim smile touching her lips. I've identified, and with the help of law enforcement, dismantled a multi-million-dollar criminal enterprise within our own ranks. I believe my audit of the North American ground operations is now complete. Harrison laughed, a genuine booming laugh. God, I knew you were the one. So the 11:00 a.m. release. It's a bomb. Arrowing appoints Serafina Vance as new CEO. What do we do about the other bomb, Arrowing's old COO, arrested by feds? We combine them. Serafina said, her voice ringing with an authority that silenced the room. We don't leak one and announce the other. We release one unified statement at 11:00 a.m. We announce my appointment. At 11:01 a.m., we release a second statement from me. She began to pace, dictating. The statement will read, "My first act as CEO of Airline International was to direct our General Counsel to cooperate fully with the Department of Justice in a matter concerning the former COO, Richard Sterling. Our company has uncovered significant financial irregularities. We referred the matter to federal authorities. We will have zero tolerance for unethical, illegal, or criminal behavior at any level of this corporation. The era of backroom deals and hidden losses is over. A new day has begun at Aero Wing. We take ownership. We get ahead of it. We don't just announce a new CEO. We announce a new culture." Harrison Gable stared at her through the screen, his expression one of profound admiration. "That," he said, "is exactly why you're in that chair. Make it so. I'll see you at the emergency board meeting this afternoon. Welcome to the job, Miss Vance. I suspect it's only going to get more interesting." The fallout was instantaneous. At 11 a.m., the business world was rocked by the news of Serafina's appointment. At 11:01 a.m., it was staggered by the news of Sterling's arrest. Framed not as a scandal, but as Serafina's first decisive act of power. The media went into a feeding frenzy. New Arrowing CEO cleans house in first hour. Sterling's golden parachute becomes a handcuff. The auditor takes the throne. But the story of Keith Rollins, the TSA agent, had also leaked. The lawyer who had witnessed the initial confrontation had in fact not just gotten on his plane. He had sat in the terminal, drafted a formal affidavit of what he saw, and sent it to a contact at the New York Times. By 2:00 p.m., the story was everywhere. A viral human interest drama that eclipsed the corporate maleficence. TSA agent rips up CEO's passport. The headline screamed. Serafina, now in the main Rowing boardroom in Manhattan, faced a barrage of questions from her new executive team. The optics on this TSA incident are complicated. The head of PR, a nervous man named Paul, stammered. The story is out of control. It's being framed as a racist attack. It was a racist attack, Paul. Serafina said, her voice cutting through his spin. It was an act of bigotry weaponized by a criminal conspiracy. We will not be hiding from that. But Mom, Paul said, we don't want to alienate. Alienate who, bigots? I am a black woman. I am now the CEO of this company. That is a fact. The fact that a man in a position of authority saw me and in his tiny, hateful mind decided I was not supposed to be there is the reason this happened. He was a tool, but he was a tool who chose his own prejudice as his weapon. She stood up, walking to the head of the long, polished table. Therefore, Arrow Wing will be making another statement. We are filing a formal civil complaint against the Department of Homeland Security and the TSA for the actions of their officer. Not for the money, but for the principle. Furthermore, we are announcing a $20 million Fly with Dignity grant funded by the money we are currently seizing back from Richard Sterling. This grant will go to non-profits dedicated to fighting for passengers' civil rights and providing bias training at a federal level. The room was silent. Serafina had just turned her own humiliation into a corporate mission statement. But Ms. Vance, the chief financial officer, said, "That's $20 million, it's $20 million in stolen money." Serafina countered, "We're not taking it from our profits. We're taking it from a thief and giving it to the public. It's the best marketing we will ever get. It shows we are not just a different company. We are a better one." Are there any other questions? There were none. That afternoon, Serafina Vance, in her navy blue pinstriped suit, walked out of the Aero Wing Tower. She was met by a phalanx of cameras. A reporter shouted, "Miss Vance, what do you have to say about the TSA agent who attacked you?" Serafina stopped. She walked to the microphones. "This morning, I was a victim," she said, her voice clear and strong, carrying over the New York traffic. "A victim of bigotry and a victim of a criminal conspiracy. That moment is over. As of 11:30 a.m., I am the CEO of Aero Wing International." The people responsible for what happened to me from the executive suite to the security line are in federal custody. My message is simple. To anyone who thinks they can use their power, whether it's a corporate title or a government badge, to demean, dehumanize, or defraud others, I'm coming for you. Arrowing is no longer your safe harbor. We are back in business. She turned, got into her car, and left a stunned and silent press corps on the sidewalk. The wheels of justice turned slowly, but Sarafina Vance had access to the best mechanics. She pressed the case relentlessly. Richard Sterling's defense crumbled. Faced with RICO charges which carried a mandatory 20-year sentence and the testimony of Frank Rizzo and a dozen other baggage handlers, he took a plea. He pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit wire fraud. He was sentenced to 12 years in a federal medium security prison. He was forced to pay back $42 million in restitution to Arrowing. He lost his home, his reputation, and his freedom. Frank Rizzo, for his cooperation, received a lighter sentence of 5 years. His entire crew was convicted. The cargo theft ring at JFK was not just dismantled, it was annihilated. And then there was Keith Rollins. His case was the most pitiful. He was not a criminal mastermind. He was a bitter, angry man who had been handed a weapon and $50,000 and told where to aim it. Sarafina attended his sentencing. Rollins, in an ill-fitting suit, stood before the federal judge weeping. His lawyer argued that he was a pawn, a victim of his own circumstances, manipulated by powerful men. When the U.S. attorney invited Sarafina to give a victim's impact statement, she stood. She did not face the judge. She faced Keith Rollins. "Mr. Rollins," she began, her voice quiet, "you didn't know who I was that morning, but I knew who you were. I've met men like you my entire life. Men who believe their small measure of power gives them the right to be cruel. Men who see a face like mine and see less. You weren't just following orders from Richard Sterling. You enjoyed it. I saw the look in your eyes when you called me a diversity quote. I saw the pleasure you took when you tore my passport. That wasn't conspiracy, Mr. Rollins. That was you. You thought I was nobody. You thought I was a girl in a hoodie you could break and no one would care. You were wrong. But my identity is not the point. What if I had been nobody? What if I had been a student or a nurse or a teacher who had saved for a year to buy that ticket? You would have destroyed her too. You would have had her arrested, deported, and ruined. And you would have laughed about it on your break. You didn't just rip up a passport. You ripped up the very idea of this country that everyone gets a fair shot, that the law protects us, not presciency. Music. That is the court's job. I am here to tell you that I, Sarafina Vance, CEO of Arrowing International, am not the last woman you will see in power. We are just the beginning. And your kind, your time is over. She sat down. The judge, a woman who had seen everything, looked at Rollins with undisguised contempt. She sentenced him to the maximum. 10 years for the destruction of the passport and a consecutive 3 years for the conspiracy, 13 years. Keith Rollins collapsed sobbing as he was led away. The karma that had hit him was not just hard, it was total. 1 year later, the 500 a.m. chill in John F. Kennedy International Airport Terminal 4 was the same. The physics of the building hadn't changed, but the atmosphere had. The terminal, once a sea of exhaustion and stale coffee, now felt different. It was brighter, cleaner. The digital signboards were crisp, the directions clear. The lines, even at this peak hour, moved with a fluid, logical efficiency. It was the result of a 9-figure contract Sarafina had personally negotiated with the Port Authority, using Arrowing's massive leverage as the terminal's primary tenant to force a complete overhaul of the passenger experience. Sarafina Vance sat not in a snaking, resentful queue, but in the new Arrowing International Flagship Lounge. The old lounge, a tired beige box, had been gutted. This new space was her vision. Soaring glass walls overlooking the airfield, warm walnut paneling a living wall of green foliage and plush deep blue armchairs. The air smelled of fresh ground espresso and baked pastries from a local bakery she had sourced herself. She was in her travel uniform, dark impeccably tailored trousers, a silk blouse, and a sharp black blazer. On the table beside her sat a copy of the Wall Street Journal. On its cover was her own face. Above the headline, "The Phoenix How Serafina. Vance taught an old airline new tricks." It had been a brutal, necessary year, a year of surgery. She had spent her first 6 months in a logistics war room, tearing the company's operations down to the studs. The cargo theft ring was just the beginning. She'd found billions in waste and sweetheart deals, and in sheer incompetence left over from Sterling's reign. She cut them all. She renegotiated the entire biofuel supply chain. She invested $2 billion in a new, more efficient fleet. She completely rebuilt the employee rostering software, which had been a source of misery for the ground crews. The results were undeniable. Rowing's on-time performance had skyrocketed from 68% to a world-leading 94%. Customer satisfaction was at an all-time high, and the stock, which had been in freefall, had tripled. Most importantly to her, she had raised the base pay for every single Arrowing employee from baggage handlers to gate agents by 30%. The Fly with Dignity grant, funded entirely by the $42 million seized from Richard Sterling, was now a fully endowed foundation running mandatory civil rights and de-escalation training for TSA agents across the country. Her phone buzzed. A text from Harrison Gable. "Wheels up." She smiled. The muscle memory of that dreadful morning a year ago still present, but the sting was gone. It was just a scar now. In the lounge, the new espresso machine is excellent. "See you in London?" She was flying to London for the 1-year anniversary of her New Day speech. A moment later, a young woman in a sharp new uniform, a stylish practical dress Serafina's team had designed to replace the old frumpy polyester suits, approached her. "M. Vance." The woman's voice was quiet, confident. Her name tag read, "Tiana, Lead Gate Agent. I'm Tiana, your lead agent for Flight 04. We are ready to begin pre-boarding whenever you are." "Thank you, Tiana," Serafina said, standing and gathering her things. She remembered the name from a commendation report. "It's good to see you. How is the new rostering software working for your team?" Tiana's professional smile brightened into something genuine. "It's a game changer, Mom. My team, we actually get to see our families. We feel seen. Thank you." "That's what we're here for, Tiana. Lead the way." Serafina walked through the terminal. It was a different kind of walk from the one a year ago. Then, in her hoodie, she had been invisible, an anonymous face in a sea of tired travelers. Now she was a landmark. A businessman in a suit recognized her and whispered to his colleague, who stared. An aero wing pilot heading to his own gate saw her and gave a crisp, respectful nod. "Morning, Miss Vance. Morning, Captain." She replied. She was their boss. She was the one who had saved their jobs, who had restored the pride in their airline. And then she was at the choke point, the TSA security screening checkpoint, 4B, the exact same lane. A faint, involuntary tightening in her chest. The body remembers. She looked at the checkpoint. The long, winding queue was gone, replaced by 3 efficient, well-staffed lanes. The agents were not barking. They were directing, their voices professional. "Please have your laptops out," one said. "We can help you with that," said another. To an elderly couple. Serafina stepped forward. The agent at the podium was a black woman in her 40s, her uniform immaculate. Her name tag read, Supervisor J. Harris. She looked up as Serafina approached, her eyes intelligent and competent. "Good morning, Miss Vance," Supervisor Harris said. Her voice was pure, no-nonsense professionalism. "Good morning, Supervisor," Serafina replied. She handed over her first-class ticket and her passport, the new pristine one issued by an emergency consulate appointment that terrible day. Supervisor Harris took the documents. She scanned the passport. She looked at her screen. She looked at Serafina. She scanned the boarding pass. "Everything is in perfect order, Mom," she said. She paused, then making a conscious decision. She leaned forward slightly, her voice dropping to a more personal, serious tone. "I was on shift that day." "Ms. Vance," Supervisor Harris said quietly, her eyes meeting Serafina's different lane. We all We all heard what happened. We all saw the internal security footage. It was disgraceful. She pushed the passport back towards Serafina. I just want to say what you did. It wasn't just for you. The Fly with Dignity training, the one your foundation runs, it's mandatory now monthly. And it's not just some video we sleep through. It's real. It's changing things for us too. You made our jobs better. You made them safer. Serafina was genuinely moved. She had focused on the corporate and passenger side, but she had never fully considered the impact on the good agents, the ones who had been forced to work alongside men like Rollins. Supervisor Harris Serafina said, "That means more than you know. Thank you. Keep up the good work." "We will," Mom Harris said with a nod. "That was a promise. Have a safe flight." Serafina walked to the scanner. She stepped through. No beep, no humiliation. She collected her bag from the belt. No laptop skittering, no latex gloves. She walked onto the jet bridge for Aero Wing Flight 004. "Welcome aboard, Miss Vance." The first-class flight attendant greeted her with a warm, genuine smile. "It's an honor to have you. Can I get you a glass of champagne or just your usual sparkling water with lime? The water would be lovely." "Thank you," Serafina said. She settled into seat 1A, the same seat. She fastened her belt and looked out the window at the airline she had rebuilt at the terminal she had helped to change. She wasn't just catching a flight. She was home. The story of Serafina Vance is a powerful, hard-hitting reminder that true karma isn't just fate. It's a consequence of action. A bitter man, blinded by his own prejudice and greed, tried to destroy a woman he saw as inferior. But he wasn't just ripping up a passport, he was tearing up his own life. Serafina's story shows us that integrity, power, and a commitment to justice are the ultimate weapons against hate. She didn't just get revenge, she changed the entire system. What did you think of this incredible story of karma? Do you believe Officer Rollins got what he deserved? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Your engagement is what helps us create more content like this. If you are on the edge of your seat, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to see justice served, and be sure to subscribe to the channel for more unforgettable real-life stories. Face.